A very good evening to one and all present. On behalf of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell of St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, I would like to thank each one of you for being present here today. Entrepreneurship is relentless. The only way to survive, thrive, and relish it is to learn to enjoy the game. This quote by our guest today tells us a lot about the importance of experiencing and to willingly persevere to be an entrepreneur. To shed light on his experience on entrepreneurship and journey of more than 10 years, it is my honor and privilege to present to you our speaker for Prism 2021, Mr. Mikhil Innani. He currently serves as the Managing Director and CEO of Apollo Finvest, a platform enabling any company to offer digital loans in 48 hours. He is one of the co-founders of PharmEasy, previously served as the director at Hotstar, and also worked with Coupon Dunya, GEP Worldwide, and Credit Suisse. On behalf of everyone at EDC, I wish all attendees of this session a great time learning. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Sir, the very first question that we would like to ask you is about your journey in PharmEasy. So, sir, what was your story behind founding PharmEasy and what made you get into the startup ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So, I think, for me, basically, right, I think when I was in, when I was in CMU, right, completing my master's essentially, right, I think I was very, very fortunate, to be surrounded by, my fellow students at that point in time who were all very, very, I guess, clear about, the career track that they wanted to take. And, it's no surprise actually today that, I had 3 roommates in my time, at CMU, and all of them today, have their own startups, in India itself, in fact, right, all in the tech space. And I think that really obviously, motivated me to get into, technology and of course, startups. So when I came back, of course, I went on to basically, be one of the very, very early team members of this, company called Coupon Dunya, right? This is basically like providing, coupons for all e-commerce websites for you to go shopping, save money. I was the fourth team member there, learned a lot in terms of, how do you go about actually building a team, culture, all the stuff that basically you read about startups in books, that's where I actually got to experience it practically. And PharmEasy really was a combination of a bunch of things, right? I think for me, again, these last 2 experiences of mine, both at CMU and Coupon Dunya came into play because, in fact, we got started with PharmEasy because, one of my roommates from CMU, he had, and in fact has yet, one of the largest pharma distribution companies in India. So, I used to always be annoying him and telling him that, you have such a phenomenal supply chain. Why don't you guys, build something consumer facing and, allow the customers to benefit from your vertical integration. And, obviously when Coupon Dunya actually got acquired by Times Internet, that's when he basically, turned the tables on me and said that, now that you're basically free, why don't you build a consumer facing arm? And we can obviously provide the backend infrastructure and distribution. And that's when an idea basically just converted into a company, right? And obviously my days at Coupon Dunya helped quite a lot because I was employee number 4 at Coupon Dunya, and employee number 5, 6, and 7, pretty much day 0 joined us at PharmEasy, right? In fact, like where I'm sitting right now is where PharmEasy got started, right? So this is my living room. All of us actually used to be sitting here and building and writing the first few lines of code, for basically starting the PharmEasy app and the backend infrastructure and everything like that. And that chemistry, of course, right? Because you worked with people at Coupon Dunya, plus working with your friends basically, right? Where he used to obviously be running one of the largest distribution companies in India. All of that chemistry, right, just came together for us to really build like a rocket ship, which obviously has gone on to become a phenomenal healthcare company in India.
Thank you so much, sir. So, sir, as you mentioned, Coupon Dunia and PharmEasy, what is the one thing you focused the most when you started the businesses? Like, what is that one thing that gave you an edge?
Great question. So I think, I say this to actually all entrepreneurs in general, right? I think when you're starting a company, right, I think it's extremely important to, to basically either start with or build over a period of time a very, very strong unfair advantage, right? So essentially, great companies either start with a huge unfair advantage, right? Or, as they grow, older and older, what people call moat basically, right? Is that's what keeps on building, right? So I think with something like PharmEasy, we had a great unfair advantage because, day zero, when we got started, we used to collaborate very, very deeply with, my friends, basically, pharma distribution company, right? And they were one of the largest in Maharashtra, and they'd been working on this for about 3-4 years, right? So for us, piggybacking on that infrastructure was huge, right? Because the supply chain knowledge, of course, the economies of scale, a lot of those things which we got day zero, our competitors, took years to catch up to, right? And by then, obviously we had continued to build on this, place of strength, to a point where it became so difficult for other people to compete with us on a playing ground, right? So I think that's an extremely important and strategic thing to think about, in any company, where it's not necessary that you may start out having, that unfair advantage, but it's very, very important that, people think about this sharply. And, over years and over a period of time, you at least build in a direction where 2 or 3 years or 4 years or 10 years down the line, it becomes very, very difficult for others to compete with you, because over the last decade or 5 years or 3 years, you have built this huge unfair advantage, just which makes competing against you extremely difficult.
Truly, sir, I think that was very encouraging for all of us. Sir, you studied in the United States of America, but you still returned and you wanted to work in India. So, what made you return and start your own business in India?
Yeah, so I mean, this was something which honestly, like, when I went to the US, right, this was always my plan, to be very honest with you guys. And in fact, so much so that when I left from CMU, in my batch, right, I think there were probably 120 worldwide students, and I think about 30 of them were Indians, and I think I was the only one, or I should not say only one, but I should say I was the earliest person who came back, because I came back immediately, right? The person who came back next was Hardik, who actually started the pharma distribution company. I think he came back 6-7 months after me. But my plan was always to come back immediately, and at that point in time, it wasn't the most easiest decision to make, right? Because when you're in a great college, you tend to get a lot of opportunities in the US. I saw my friends around me all getting into Deloitte, Apple, Google, all of these popular companies, right? And you're obviously excited, you want to be part of something like that. But I think for me, I always wanted to, do something in the entrepreneurship space. And, because of that, I felt like, India is the best place for, somebody like me to do it, because of multiple things, right? I think one is the understanding of the market, right? You'll always know, your own homeland significantly better than, some place you've been, at for a couple of years, as an example. So that was a big draw for me. And additionally as well, like, I always kind of told myself this very simple thing, right? Like, if you're really smart, I think you can make it in any country, right? Like, I mean, and you can, at that point in time, I think it was probably a bit of, naivety as well, right? Not knowing any better, that you can tell these things to yourself and, you'll buy it, right? That, yeah, you can be Superman, you can go anywhere and you'll be successful. But I think, those was the words which I used to tell myself back then, because I used to obviously see all my friends and, they used to all go to these, have these amazing job offers as you do. But I wanted to be basically some place where I could clearly see, there is a huge possibility of, you know this is back in 2010 and 11, right? Like, I mean, startups don't even exist, right? Working in the internet space, or I would say, the IT space, back then, as they used to call it, used to be basically working in like Infosys, Wipro, companies like this, right? Which obviously wasn't, my cup of tea, as an example. But I wanted to always come back, and I knew that there is a lot of scope for development, in India, especially after having seen the kind of, products and the kind of internet companies which were getting built out of the US. Nothing like that existed, right, in India. Like back in 2010, when I used to work in, a company called Coupon Dunia, like my family used to think that it's a funny company, it's a funny sounding company. It's almost like a college project where, 4 or 5 of these kids are working on something, so that was the reputation basically of, these early stage, companies. Obviously today, I think most people, at least I tend to interact with, at least the young audience, below the age of 30-35, everybody wants to work in internet companies, everybody wants to work in startups, because, everybody kind of recognizes the opportunity ahead. But, one thing which I think all of you guys will have to be really, really, good at in your career is, taking the path less traveled, right? Sometimes, you have to take, small risks, right, for big payoffs, and always kind of justify it to yourself as, trying to think of yourself, is this really a risk, right? So in my opinion, it wasn't really a big risk. It was, something which I felt like, if you're really smart, India, you can go to, Israel, you can go anywhere, right? Like, I think, people value hardworking, smart people, and you'll be successful no matter where you go. The attraction for me in India was, of course, coming out here, building your own company. And at the same point in time, I just saw a massive opportunity because of, huge gaps that were present at that point in time.
Yes, sir, India has a lot of opportunities to come. So, sir, as you mentioned, were you at the receiving end of the unfair advantage posed by PharmEasy? Like, how would you have tackled it?
Can you repeat the question again?
Were you at the receiving end of the unfair advantage posed by PharmEasy? Like, how would you have tackled it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we did have an unfair advantage, right? Like, so I mean, the fact that we did have, a pharma distribution company, which was one of the largest in Maharashtra, right? So I think that gave us a huge leg up, because, right from operations, right, to understanding of the domain, to talking to the right people, having economies of scale, so that we are able to offer, like, I think 20-25% kind of discount that we were offering to our end customers. It was a big deal, right? And at that point in time, there were two key things, right? One is, of course, pricing, but second, actually, two other things I would say is, one is actually being able to, complete the orders of customers on time, and actually being able to fulfill their basket. And what I mean by that is that, when you call for medicines, back then, when people used to just send us a prescription, it used to be very difficult for us to be able to source all of the medicines and give it to the person on time, right? Because so many doctors at that point in time used to write like local medicines which are available only in their area, because this whole ecosystem is a little bit complex, where, doctors will purposely write medicines which are available close to the chemists, around them. Because when you actually go with your with your prescription to these chemists, they will only have the medicines and they will sell it to you. And actually doctors unfortunately make a commission, in this way. So it's a very complex spider web, right? So we had to actually break all of that stuff up, right? Where, we had to basically have incredible supply chain, where even if you were placing an order in Bangalore, right, or Bombay or wherever you were, we used to, do whatever it takes to make sure the medicines actually are delivered to you in the next 24 to 48 hours, by getting medicines from no matter where they were, right? Because that was incredibly important, and combined with the regulatory aspects, right, which were there. I mean, we were literally selling drugs online, right? So you can imagine, what's the reaction at home, and combined with what's the reaction of every government official we're talking to, right? At home, literally, we're hearing things like, was there no other idea which came to your mind that you wanted to basically start selling drugs online? And when you're talking to government officials, right, they're all panicking because, essentially we were taking on, literally the pharmaceutical mafia, right? And this was something at that point in time where, not even some companies as large as the Reliance was able to take on, right? There were companies like Noble Chemist and all of these things which were, smallish entities, but this wasn't an organized space where you had somebody like a Tata, Birla, Reliance. Even they were not present in the offline format, right? But for you to come in a way which is online and disrupt everything, we got every lawsuit you can imagine, coming to us, right? As an example, we literally used to get cease and desist letters, right? A cease and desist letter, for everybody who doesn't know what it is, it's basically a letter that you get from legal authorities in India, which says that stop your company today. Like it's not like somebody is suing you where you can fight back and sue back. It's a letter which says that the case is done, you've lost, so shut your company, right? Like we've got countless of these, but we just went on going, right? We used to have all kind of, I would say, informal people come and meet us, threatening us, saying that shut this thing down or you don't know what the consequences are. You can imagine everything under the sun, which obviously comes to a company like this, which is trying to disrupt the status quo, right? But I think this is the most important thing, right? Fundamentally, if what you're doing is the right thing, for basically the customers and for the ecosystem. And we knew this was the case, right? Because ultimately our promise was affordable healthcare, right? And we're proud to say that even today, as an example, that aspect has held up, right? Like ultimately now, this has become the new status quo, right? Like as an example, when people want to order medicines, they actually prefer ordering it online because they know they'll be able to get it at a much cheaper cost, right? And when we wanted to change something like this and eat into other people's margins, essentially, right? It was a huge battle, and having that unfair advantage of industry knowledge, which obviously we had an ocean of, right, as compared to our competitors, was hugely advantageous.
That was very insightful, sir. Sir, you spoke about the obstacles which you had to face, right? You got plenty of lawsuits. You spoke about the decisions that you had to take when you entered such an untapped sector. You suggested us that we should explore this untraveled road and encouraged us not to think of it as a big risk that we should take. So, sir, if you had to sum up, or if you had to say the top three qualities which an entrepreneur should possess, so, sir, what would those top three qualities be?
I would say number one thing is, you have to be an optimist, right? The world is unfortunately filled with, pessimists, right? It's very cool to say, "Arey, nahi hoga yaar, aisa nahi chalta hai." This is not how it works, right? Because everybody feels smart by saying, ki, everybody feels smart by pointing out the holes, right? But it takes, a truly smart person to actually find that 1% probability, ki, what if it works, right? If it works, it can change the world. It can change, a small things about it, about an industry which can, positively impact so many people. So definitely quality number one is optimist. I think, The number two thing, right, is just be incredibly, it's relentless, right? That's the most important thing that you have to understand as an entrepreneur. And I think, what you guys said in the start, right? I truly believe in that, entrepreneurship is so relentless that, if you take it too seriously, it will eat you up and spit you out, right? And you'll probably be ultra depressed, right? So it's very, very important, in entrepreneurship to know that this game does not end. It's not a 1-2 year game. Once you get into entrepreneurship, right, you're there for life, right? Because it's very, very difficult, as I have personally found it as well, right, to go back to just being a team member, no matter what, how big, how small, whatever it is, in terms of the company, right? You'll always want to have your own thing. You'll always want to be building stuff by your own terms. So it's a bug, right, that you catch, and it stays with you for life. But it is relentless, right? So learn to enjoy it. And the point number three, which is, I think, very, very important, is at the same point in time, um, you know learn to balance your life, essentially, right? I think I've seen a lot of people make, um, basically, like, getting burnt out, or working like a dog and doing all of these things fashionable. I think, while I do understand, and I completely agree that during the start of any company, you have to work smart and hard, right? There are no two ways about it. But do remember, at the same point in time, why are you doing this, right? Ultimately, everybody's doing whatever they're doing in life to actually be happy, right? So if decide what makes you happy, right? If it is spending time with your friends, family, I don't know, playing video games, watching sports, whatever it is, right? Like, you don't give up on all of those things, because that's ultimately what life's also about, right? Because if you aren't enjoying it, right, if you aren't reaping the benefits of being an entrepreneur, and doing it with a smile on your face, it's not really worth it in the end of the day, right? Because ultimately, it's extremely important, no matter what you do, whether an entrepreneur or not, right, you actually focus on doing things which truly make you happy from the inside.
Thank you, sir. I think that was very helpful from your end. So, sir, since you mentioned Coupon Dunya and PharmEasy, apart from these two segments, you have worked in various other companies as well, be it Hotstar and be it Apollo Finvest. So, all these companies are in different segments. So, how did you manage the transition from one company to another? And was there any reason for such changes?
I mean, I just liken it to being a student in a university, right? Like, how you guys have, so many different subjects, right? Like, and when you study one subject, that doesn't mean, you don't find the other subject interesting, right? So I treat every, company that I do exactly like, you treat a subject, where you go into it with, a childlike curiosity, with a hunger to learn, be extremely respectful. I've tried to, in all companies I've tried to build, honestly, the first 6 to 8 months, I've just been a student, right? Where I just do two things, right? I read as much as possible. And second, I try and reach out to as many entrepreneurs in that space as possible, to talk to them, to understand, essentially what their learnings have been in this space, what challenges they've had, you know, uh, and just learn, right? Like, if you learn really well, and just, it's like doing a mini PhD in 6 months. Once you do that, right, obviously the learning obviously never ends. But after 6 to 8 months is really when you start applying what you've learned, uh, to basically create something special, right? So the first 6 months of any entrepreneurship is combination of learning and applying first principle knowledge, which is transmittable through any format of business, right? Whether it's online, offline, multiple online, different kind of businesses, how you build a product, how you care for a customer, how you obsess about your power customers, like, foundational 101 principles, right? Like, those don't change for me no matter what you do. I think what just changes is technical know-how, which I think you can learn, right? You can, I mean, there are so many examples in this world, right? Like, you'll have, people who obviously, like smart students like yourself, studying so many different subjects. We'll have, entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and, Jeff Bezos, selling, I don't know, creating PayPal on one side, and then on the other side of the spectrum, they're sending, vehicles and, rockets to the moon and God knows where else. So I think it's just that, right? I think you just have to basically be going into it with childlike curiosity. And I think another very, very critical thing is, build phenomenal teams, right? I've been very, very fortunate that no matter where I went, I was able to surround myself with, team members where, we had a great yin yang going on, right? So if you have the perfect, wabi sabi, yin yang, whatever you want to call it, going on, then that really helps you, right? Because, right from your co-founders to, your team members, I think if you have a great team, you can conquer, a lot of problems. That's how I basically have gone about, doing these things.
So, sir, you spoke about making the perfect team. You have made teams, you've been an employee yourself in a number of companies, and now you are the head of management in a pool of Finvest. So, sir, when you hire people, so what is that quality, or what are those qualities which you look for when you hire employees or interns? What will that be?
So I would say the following, right? I definitely look for, the number one thing I try to look for is, uh, a clear sign of intent. So as an example, right? Like if I talk to somebody and they tell me that, listen, I'm very, very interested in fintech, as an example, right? I do look at it, I do ask them that what have they done so far with that interest, right? And it can be anything, right? It can be like a small, project that they've done while they were studying. It can be a side mini startup that they ran. It could be a small, fintech product that they themselves have created. It could be maybe some books that they've read, anything, right? Anything which shows me that, you did take action of your interest. So for me, that's very important, right? Because a lot of people want to do many things, but nobody does anything about it, right? And that's very not authentic, right? I really look for authenticity. Essentially, like, I want people to do what they really, really want to do, right? Because if you get a person who is trying to, put themselves in, a square peg in a circular, hole, isn't going to work really well, right? So it's very important for me that I'm able to find people who truly want to be there in this company for that role, because then they'll give 120%, right? If it's suboptimal, right, it's super simple, right? Like, it's human desire, right? Like, if you get what you want to do, you will be amazing, right? If you just do something for the sake of doing it, you'll perform like 60-70% of your capacity and you'll be terrible at it, right? So that's number one. Number two and three is actually super simple. I just look at, people who have, like a 7 on 10 IQ, people who are, who are smart, and have demonstrated, this skill set in some way, right? And not necessarily by books, right? It could be anything, again, right? It could be a project. It could be, maybe they've I don't know, they've gone into sports, as an example, whatever it is, right? I think point number three for me is, discipline and hard work, right? So again, there are various ways in which you can demonstrate it, right? Like, I mean, if you're a student, you may have, gone out and cleared some very difficult exam, right? While people say that, studies and, marks, etc., are not important, for me, it's not about the marks. It's actually about the discipline it gives you, right? Most of the times, most of the things that we all study are actually, I mean, at least to me, I found them useless in practical life, right? But what it actually teaches you is just discipline, right? Like, can you be disciplined enough to, do something which is hard and do it really well, right? It can be a really tough exam. It can be, again, like I gave an example, you could be part of a sports team. You could have run a marathon. Anything which demonstrates hard work and discipline is important. And I think, finally, I really like to look at X factor. And what I mean by X factor is just something unique, right? Which is something which is, it could be anything, right? Again, it could be something where the opposite person, likes to go hiking, or likes to, just something authentic, basically, right? Again, something which makes me feel like, this person has a hobby or a passion, right? And they have followed it through, right? And this can be, again, this is like, so two passions, right? One passion is about your career. It can be fintech, it can be healthcare, whatever it is. And second is a general passion. It can be about video games, it can be about sports, it can be about watching cricket, anything. But just something which makes me feel that, listen, if you're passionate about something, you can really go the extra mile. So I think this combination really makes a great team member, because, to me, if you're smart, if you're hardworking and disciplined, and you have the potential to be fascinated and passionate about something, you know if we are able to make you that, that's how I think, if we are able to make you that passionate about the work that we are doing at Apollo, you will turn out to be like a superstar team member, right? Like, so that's how I try to hire.
So as you mentioned, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, what business books or personal development books would you suggest to us as students that like we should read and learn from those?
Hmm. So, I'll tell you, like, I have a philosophy about books, right? And I think in the world, right, like, a lot of people have made books be into like almost like basically studies, right? And studies tend to have like a very negative tinge to them, where people like, "Arey yaar, padhai nahi karni yaar," or "books mat padhao." It's become that way. So my suggestion generally to people is the following, right? Number one is, I generally tell people, don't read business books, because I don't think any book can teach you business. I think if you want to learn business, actually do business, right? I think if you want to learn something via books, read technical books, because technical stuff is something which books can teach you. But business, you can actually just learn by doing business, yourself, right? You can literally start selling lemonade, downstairs, and you learn something about business, right? In terms of just reading anything in general, my suggestion when it comes to non-fiction, right, is that just read any book which you actually enjoy. So I'll give you my own example, right? Like, I really love reading, like, I'll give you some books I love, right? I love reading Shoe Dog. Shoe Dog basically is the story of, the Nike founder. I liked it not because I went into it reading that, went into it thinking, oh, I'm going to learn so much from it. I went into it knowing that it's like watching a movie. Like, other people, the way they read Harry Potter, I read like Shoe Dog, because, to me, in my mind, when I read the book, it looked like a movie, right? There are similar books for, the story of Amazon as an example, which is like, I think, A to Z, the store, the everything store as an example. There are books on Steve Jobs. There are books on, Elon Musk. There are so many of these books out there, right? So what I try to do, there's a Hard Things About Hard Things. There's a really, that's a really nice book. But there's so many these different kind of books, right? But like, I always tell people, books are so personal that just, the only thing I tell people is just read, right? Just read anything, right? Read anything which, again, that you enjoy in the non-fiction space. Because if I come and tell you that, listen, read Lean Startups, right? The book, right? Now, personally, I find that book like, I think that's the Bible, if of the startup world, of technology companies, whatever. I think, honestly, it can be applied to any aspect of life, to be honest. But it's a phenomenal book, right? But you may not find it to be phenomenal, and you will read that book, and you will find it, you'll read it like a textbook, right? And when you read it like a textbook, it will kill your entire childlike curiosity to read books, because you'll be like, "Arey yaar, books is just like this, it's like a textbook, right? It's so annoying." So that should never happen to you, right? In fact, when I read books, I just pick up a book and I'll read any chapter, right? I know these people have this habit, right? Like, let's start from the first page and then just keep reading in line. It's not a textbook. We're not in school. You can read any chapter you want, skip all pages. If you find a chapter boring, skip it. Just enjoy it. It's like a, if you start looking at it from that perspective, no, you will love reading, and reading will be your friend. It will be something that you do in a joyous manner, rather than it becoming like, this dreaded, studies after studies kind of way, which, a lot of people have, made it in their mind out to be.
That was a great suggestion, sir. Sir, now talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that it has had on not only the economy but also the startup system. So, sir, do you think that the online setup in which we are working right now has taken a big toll on the startup system? If yes, then how?
I think overall, to be very honest, I think, you know, in the macro sense of things, right, from a technology startup perspective, I think, it's not great to say this, but the fact is it's been a huge boon, to be very honest, right? Because I think now the amount of, capital flowing into technology companies is at an all-time high, right? Like it's just insane, right? Like anything which is, technology driven, people want to be part of that, people want to fund that. Those are the only companies which are working. It's almost lopsided to that, to that point, right? So I think it's a great time to be an internet entrepreneur in India. It's a phenomenal time, right? Like there's no two ways about it. Um, of course, I think, the aspect of, work from home, all of those things are, and of course, all of the negativity of COVID, right? Like that's a cloud around everybody's mind, whether you're a, you know, online or, offline business as an example. Even if you're students, right? I mean, I see all of you guys are, it seems like you guys are all in different locations. It's not the best thing, obviously. Typically, again, in student life, you want to be, in one campus around each other, make friends, enjoy yourself, right? Like that's how you do it. Like how much can you do over video calls? It's very transactional. I think the same situation happens even when you're working with your colleagues, right? Right now, a lot of phone calls and a lot of interactions and a lot of work is completely online, which isn't the best thing in the world, to be honest, because you do feel in many ways that this is just it takes the human element out of it, right? So it's very transactional, and it isn't as fun as it was before, where you could actually meet people, go out, have fun, actually make friends, real friends, when you're actually working together, rather than right now it being very, very transactional. So that's the current state at this point in time. But on the grand level of things, right, obviously the humanity part of it, sucks, and hopefully that improves over the next 12, 18 months, when this whole COVID situation hopefully becomes significantly normal. I don't think cases are going to drop. I think hopefully the hospitalizations just basically become as low as humanly possible. But I think on the other end of the spectrum, from a business perspective, um, most tech startups have definitely benefited as an industry. I think most entrepreneurs also, at least smart entrepreneurs, if they realize that their space was negatively hit because of COVID, they have pivoted, right? Or have come up with ideas which are more, in line with the COVID environment right now, and businesses which are prospering, in the COVID space. That's how I have at least seen the ecosystem kind of evolve.
Thank you for the answer, sir. So lastly, life often lands us in places where we never thought we would be. So, sir, looking back at your journey, do you think there are certain things which you would have done differently?
Honestly, no. I mean, I just think that I mean, I just think, like, I'm blessed, right, to be wherever I've been. All a startup journey is full of ups and downs, to be honest, right? Like, I mean, from the outside, sometimes it seems that everything is amazing, but like when you're in this roller coaster ride, I can tell you, every startup, right, no matter how amazing it looks from the outside, it is it is it is full of highs and lows, right? And one of the things I've tried to incorporate as an entrepreneur is just two things, right? Number one is uh, always learn from every low, and it's never as low as you actually think it is. Even though you may feel really, really sucky in that moment, you know I I can promise you that probably in a year from now or 2 years from now, you will get over it in a much more meaningful way, sometimes even laugh about those situations and how seriously you took it. And the highs are never that high, right? Like, so you just have to kind of be a little bit zen about these situations with the best of your human capability. And I don't like to change anything, because I feel like ultimately every positive and negative experience makes you the person you are, and gives you the tools that you need to conquer whatever it is that you're going to be conquering next, right? So everything happens for a reason, and you just have to kind of roll with the punches, right? That's how I kind of think.
Thank you so much, sir. It was truly enriching to be in conversation with you and know about all your experiences, learnings, and your advice to students. So, as we conclude this session of our session, we would like to now invite questions from the audience, and we request you to answer those as well. So, the very first question that we've got from the audience is that what were the things you did that set your company apart after the ideation stage?
I think, that's, one of the, I would say two things, right? Like, I think, one was our crazy focus on customers, right? And I yet say this, to all startups right now, including our own, where, if you're obsessed with your customers and, as long as you're making them happy, I think everything in your life and your startup will be amazing, right? The minute you kind of change your focus, right, from being obsessed with your customers to obsessed about, I don't know, your shareholders, if you're a public company, or your investors, I think you're in trouble, right? Because over the long horizon of time, all shareholder interest and investor interest is aligned with customer interest, right? If your customers are happy, over the long horizon of time, your investors and shareholders will be happy, right? So that's number one. Stick to this like glue. That's incredibly important. So that's point number one. I think point number two, which again I'm yet obsessed with, is hiring. I think hiring is a superpower. It can make and break companies. You'll have two companies deploying the exact same strategy, exact same idea, exact same market, everything the same, but people is what really makes or breaks companies, right? And as a leader in a company, to me, one of the most important criteria of being a leader is being amazing at hiring, right? And the ability to actually spot talent and nurture the talent. Like I always keep saying, right? In a startup, there are many startups, and those startups are actually all humans, right? Because as a startup, you can't go out and hire people who all have 20 years experience, right? You just don't have the capital to do that. So you have to hire young people who are essentially, almost like a mini startup for you, right? For you to guide them, nurture them, and make them into superstar versions of themselves. So hiring is also another very important thing, other than obsession with customers.
Thank you so much for that, sir. So the next question that we've got from the audience is that for new startups to receive funding, it's a very big challenge. So how did you manage to raise appropriate funds at your time?
Yeah, so I think just the headline act, I would say, for that, right, is, I think we go back to the previous answer, right, where funding is a consequence of creating a product which your customers love, right? So and firstly, like just to like go even higher, right? And I know I'm among students, so I feel it's really important to say this out loud, that don't build companies for investors, right, to get funded, right? I think I hate the media right now, like because they're obsessed around funding. It's almost like people, if you don't raise funding, you're not successful. All of that is complete gibberish. If you go back to first principles, right, the goal should be, right, and this should be your mission statement. You want to create a company which has customers loving your product, paying for it, and you having healthy margins, right? Like, that's what a company should be. The job of an investor is to find you and fund you, and that's their job, right? Your job is to create a great product which your customers love and have good margin, right? So you're making money. So let's separate these two jobs, right? Let entrepreneurs do the job that they're supposed to be doing. Let investors do their job, which is finding such businesses, telling you that, hey, we want to give you money. Then you actually deciding whether you A, need the money, B, do you want to part terms, part equity, right? Which is, you know, basically a part of your company to this unknown stranger, right? It's like getting married, right? And this marriage is not something which you can get away with from divorce, right? This is something which it'll be the most messiest divorce ever, right? So you want to be extremely on point over here, where you do, firstly, do you need the money? If you need the money, do crazy amount of due diligence in making sure, is this the right set of people to take the money from, right? Are they people that you want to be around for the next 10, 20 years, right? If the answer is all yes, then you go about doing this, right? So always remember this: if you build a good enough product which you have great customers for, you have healthy margins, I promise you, investors will come smashing your door and telling you, here's the check, please take our money. Because that's how it really, really works, right? Like, it's just exactly like being an A+ student, right? If you're an A+ student, you will have 3 4 offers from really amazing companies wanting to hire you, right? Then it's your question mark at that point in time. Do you want to get hired? Do you want to start something of your own? Or amongst these 3 4 people, who do you see your future with, right? It's exactly this way if you create a good company, right? So life is actually super simple. We tend to overcomplicate it by thinking the first thing people think about. People don't even want to do startups. I think people just want to get funded, right? But that really doesn't mean anything, right? So yeah, that's very important to kind of keep in mind.
So that was very well explained, sir. Thank you for that. The next question which we have is that what do you consider non-negotiable in the business? What is one thing that is non-negotiable for you?
I think honestly, just for me, like, the most, I'll tell you, like, since I have my own business, I think I would say working with people who I love working with, right? Like, to me, this is non-negotiable. I think as an entrepreneur, right, there are so many ups and downs. You just want to make sure you are at least surrounded by people you like working with, right? And I shouldn't even say the word like, because most people like working at jobs as well. But I think as an entrepreneur, you literally have the opportunity to pick and choose every single person that you are working with. Like, if you don't like somebody, you can actually tell them bye bye. And if you like somebody, you can make sure that they stay with you, to the best of your capability. Or if you like somebody else in another company, you can try and hire them. It's amazing. It's a superpower, right? So to me, like, that is a non-negotiable. Like, working with people who I actually enjoy working with, who I feel have the same drive, ambition, same first principle thought process, you know as the founders, right? That's very, very important to me. And that's probably the only non-negotiable. Yeah.
Thank you for that, sir. Sir, since we're nearing the end of the session, so do you have the time to answer a couple of more questions? Should I tell you?
Yeah, sure. I think we have until 5, so we can go with another couple of questions.
So the other question which we received from the audience was that how did your family support you when you took this decision to start a business on your own and build such a different thing on your own? How was your family? What they support?
I mean, very honestly, like, my family's been super supportive. I think, um, you know, um, like every family, like, there are apprehensions, right? So as an example, when I was coming, when I came back to India, as an example, right? So before joining Pondunia, I used to work in I used to work in this company called GEP, right? And I was there for, I think, a little more than a year or so, something like that, right? And it is an MNC. It's a, I think, company based out of New York or something like that, right? And then I went on to join obviously Coupon Dunia, right? And it became a little bit of a joke at home where he's going to work in this funny sounding company, which basically gives away free coupons online, right? So to explain them the business model, why the name is Coupon Dunia, all of these things, why are there only 6 people in the company, all of those things at that point in time uh, became a thing. But at least, honestly, like, fair play to them, they've always trusted me to do the right thing, right? Like, they've always known that, I'm the kind of person which, if I do something I really like, I'll be amazing at it. If you put me in a place where I don't want to be, I'll be a huge liability, honestly. So, they understood this thing. They trusted me to take the right decisions. And, I'm extremely thankful, for that, right? I think, today, I will say this, right? I think today the space is so much more better, right? Like today, if all the parents, as an example, and, family members are reading newspapers, the entire newspaper, if not, most of it is basically covered with startups and, them going IPO, and, like companies like Apollo who are public listed and a startup, Zomato obviously going public. So, the success stories are just so loud now, right? Where, now as an example, you know doing a startup, right, or, being part of a startup, I don't personally believe it's a risk until and unless, you do have financial dependence, right? So in fact, like, my suggestion always to, young folks especially, right, if you're looking to do a startup, there's absolutely zero risk in my personal opinion, right? Because I always say this, that if you do a startup, it's not like you're going to come out dumber at the other end, right? You will definitely come out to be more responsible, more hardworking. In fact, you will value every small part of how a company is made if you ever go back into, joining another company, right? And I can tell you, as being a person who's hiring, I love to hire ex-entrepreneurs, right? Because when they come in, they just come in and, do everything as if it's their own company. And that's what you want. You want people who are, self-sufficient, owners, responsible, not liabilities, right? Not like, babies coming out and asking you, what's the HR policy, right? Like, you don't want those kind of people, right? You want people who are just like, screw everything, I'm here to, make a difference. Let's go out and win, right? And that's the mentality which you get when you build your own company, because, you go through so many hardships, and you ultimately come out on the other side knowing what is actually the most important thing, when A, you looked for team members that you were hiring, and B, how to be an A plus team member, because you would have realized that, what your team members were not doing in the best way possible, right? So now, in my opinion, and this happened to me as well, right? Like when I went from a PharmEasy, to a Hotstar, I know, how well Hotstar valued me, right? And how they treated me was exceptional, right? I'll always be grateful for, the kind of support and, welcome that they always gave me. And I think that's the case for, all entrepreneurs, right? If you do get good experiences, it doesn't matter if you were successful or you did not, succeed. It'll be, you will be welcomed into the workforce if you ever decide to go back with open arms, because now there's so many internet companies who, love to have entrepreneurs with them.
That was very well explained, sir. So this will be our last question for this session. So the question is that who was your role model when you started your business? Whom did you look up to? And is it important to have mentors in order to succeed?
Yeah. So, for me, it's a, I mean, yeah, so I do have, people, that I look up to as an example, of course. So, people like, the usual suspects, right? People like Steve Jobs, people like, I'm a huge Manchester United fan, so I love, Sir Alex Ferguson, like, I mean, there are, these, for me, like, there are many, many people in my life who, as an example, I admire. And, I take the best parts with them, of them with me, essentially, right? So, the clarity of thought process and brilliant product making of somebody like a Steve Jobs, or the determination and trying to build long-term companies like somebody like Sir Alex Ferguson. And there are so many of these great, we're all surrounded by so many of these great individuals out there, right? Like people can find inspiration. For me, these things are inspiring essentially, right? So I take the best parts about all of these guys with me, and when I read their books, when I see their videos or whatever it is, it's very inspiring, especially as an entrepreneur. When you're having low moments, you want that spark of inspiration, right? Like and I don't know, it's magical to me. But whenever I'm reading, a really nice, book about startups, or I'm, seeing some good content, videos about all of these amazing entrepreneurs which have been there in the world, I always come out on the other side, with a smile on my face, energized, inspired, and honestly with ideas on how I can make my company better, right? I don't know what, it's never usually the content which is written. It just sparks something in my head, so it's really inspiring. I think in terms of mentors, I believe that I don't know, like I personally, I wouldn't say I have mentors, but I definitely have people who make me feel safe, right? I should say, that's how I think about it. Like I think everybody in their life, in their career, should have those people. I think people think of mentors in different ways, but I think there should be people in your life who make you feel safe. And what I mean by safe is when you're in, and when you think things are going wrong, right? Or as an example, you don't know what to do, you're in some kind of issue. Either you don't know how to code this up, or you don't know what is the right product decision. You can call up that somebody who can make you feel it's honestly all right. And they may not have the right answer, but they have the right words to say to comfort you, essentially, right? And this can be anybody, right? This can be even your parents, it can be your sibling, it can be an ex-colleague, right, who made you feel really special, and made you feel like everything's going to be all right. I think most people need, it's almost like a pseudo therapist in my opinion, right? In many ways. So I think that's what most people should have, a coach slash therapist. That's the kind of person that I kind of look for. So yeah, like that's how at least I've thought about these particular questions.
The credit form has been, thank you so much, sir. The credit form has been rolled out in the chat box. All the attendees are requested to fill it up in the next 5 minutes to avail the credit. After such an inspiring session, it is an absolute honor and my pleasant duty to propose the vote of thanks today on behalf of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell of St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. With immense appreciation and gratitude, I thank Mr. Mikhil Innani, present with us today, who has spent his valuable time gracing the students on a great concern at this age. Adorning the event, your opinions have enlightened us and shown us revolutionary paths for the future. A special mention to our respected principal, Reverend Dr. Dominic Xavier, and Vice Principal, Reverend Father Joseph Kulandai, and Reverend Father Peter Arokian, for encouraging us to pursue greatness and live up to the great Xaverian reputation. I would further like to thank our faculty advisor, Dr. Arup Kumar Mitra, for his leading supervision and inspiration at every point of time in college. Last but not the least, I would extend a deep sense of appreciation for all the support, timely implementation, and guidance provided by the members of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell. We owe the success of the event to you. Next, we begin with the corporate simulation round for Prism 2021 from tomorrow, 24th of September. We wish each participant all the best for the event and request all to join their respective slots timely. Once again, thank you all for turning in with EDC. Have a pleasant evening. Thank you.